I thought this was interesting. The tragic decline of optimized video games. I'm talking about you, Monster Hunter Wilds. I was playing it on PC, and let me tell you, that game is a mess. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't have a top-of-the-line PC, but even then, I hear that the optimization issues for that game arise consistently, and Capcom have done nothing to fix it. I'm interested to see the take on this. Let's see what he's talking about.
In 2025, you either make a down payment on a house or you buy a mid-range PC. Over the years, video game graphics have evolved far beyond what we ever could imagine to be possible. Pores in the skin, motion capture technology, photorealistic shadows and reflections that adjust themselves properly in real time.
Right.
And that was 2018. Now we have pores in the skin, motion capture technology,
Same thing.
photorealistic shadows and reflections that adjust themselves in real time at sub 60 frames per second with the most powerful gaming GPU on the market, accompanied with ghosting, poppin', input lag, flickering, motion blur without motion blur. What the happened? I'm a simple gamer, and I like...
It's time to hold these companies accountable for their game's issues. Why am I paying $70 for a video game that doesn't run on my machine? That's why sometimes I feel like going back to console, just because these games are coming out like shit every time. Nowadays, they even have the balls to charge $80. Nintendo, I'm looking at you. That's expensive. But one thing about Nintendo is that their games, fortunately enough, they come out great out the package. They usually don't need a day one update to fix, and they usually run well on the system. But these third-party games, they need to be held accountable for the shit that they pull.
I like to think that I play a variety of different genres. The Last of Us, Danganronpa, Silent Hill, Red Dead, Hentai Girl Karen, Fortnite. But in
That's a
recent
good one,
years,
eh?
I found myself using mods more and more just to get my games to run well. Back in 2017,
That's insane
I
to
owned
let
a
the community
$600
fix your
PC,
game.
and I played PUBG, Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, and Borderlands on it all the time. But nowadays, it's hard to run any modern title on a PC under $1,500, or at least it's hard to make the games look good. Yes, of course technology and graphics evolve over time, but it's clear that things have gotten a little disproportionate, especially when the beefiest, dump truckiest GPUs struggle to run games and don't even break
Hire
the
better
60
game
FPS
developers.
mark. I'm talking, of course, about the rapidly spreading virus in gaming right now known as bad optimization. But what killed optimization? Why do developers not care for their games to run good and look good at the same time, and instead exclusively prioritize making them appealing to the eyes? Well, like many topics, it's...
Chat, I have a hot take. I think that companies like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, I think that they're paying the game developers. This might be a stretch, but it is what it is. They might be paying these companies to say, hey, for the PC port of this game, don't make it run well. Only make it run well on console.
not so black and white, and there are a lot of reasons, and starting with the first 13th reason why, upscaling technology. In the past few years,
Well, that's terrible.
artificial
Fake frame
intelligence
rates.
has evolved at an alarming
That's the time
rate.
that we're in.
AI is being used everywhere. We have AI-generated videos like this Coca-Cola ad I got, AI-generated essays, AI-generated songs, AI-generated comments, which is worthy of a whole different video in itself, and of course,
Guys, if you're in school-
AI-generated graphics. Well, not
You're in school, I know you're having the best time of your life. And you want to know why? It's because you have the power of AI. You can use ChatGPT to write your essays for you. I wish when I was in school, I had AI. I would be using that shit. But to use it for video games is a totally different story. Developers, y'all kind of fucking up because now it's making our systems run poorly. I hope you know that.
Completely AI generated. Upscaling technology in video games works like this. The game runs at a lower resolution like 1080p, and then it gets upscaled to a higher resolution like 1440p. In theory, this will make your game look like it normally would at base resolution, but that's not necessarily true. Even on a quality setting, some problems just become glaring. In Fortnite, there's some serious shadow flickering and fuzziness going on in some areas, and in Red Dead Redemption 2, it may not seem too different at first glance, but look at how the game looks when it starts raining. What the f- AI has to guess what the game
terrible.
will look like at a higher resolution, and as a result, the game will never look like how the developers intended with upscaling on. I really care about vision and artistic direction, and I can't help but feel like DLSS and FSR are quick and easy solutions to improve frame rate, but
Like a Band-Aid.
molest the original concept. DLSS, or Deep Learning Supersampling, NVIDIA's upscaling technology, has settings you can choose from, such as quality, balance, performance, and ultra performance. What this does is lower the base resolution resolution of the game, so instead of upscaling 1080p to 1440p, it'll upscale 720p or 480p to 1440p. The lower the base resolution, the more inaccurate the upscale. And for real, who
That's
the hell
disgusting.
even plays on performance modes? DLSS is only enabled on RTX cards anyway, and I'm pretty sure all of those cards are capable enough for gamers to not have to submit to the worst case scenario to enjoy a video game. Oh shit. Another AI-generated solution modern
Wait,
NVIDIA GPUs
what card was that?
utilizing
Hold
is the
on.
brand game. Oh shit.
Oh, I thought that was my card, chat. I have a 3060 Ti on this.
Another
It runs
AI-generated
everything
solution
like shit
modern
nowadays.
NVIDIA GPUs are utilizing is the brand spanking new frame generation method. What this does is it takes 2 frames from your game and will use AI to interpret what a middle frame would look like. So basically, your frame rate will go from 30 to 60. This will inevitably cause input lag, but for laid-back gamers who use wireless controllers, that won't be much of an issue, since wireless controllers obviously have input lag already, so
They
it really
do.
depends on what game you're playing. Now, I already know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, just one N? Upscaling? Frame generation? This is the future of gaming. Now I can play GTA 6 on my RTX 20 shitty Ti. And my response to that is short-term solutions cause long-term problems, and it's already happening. Yes,
Yeah, 'cause
upscaling
developers get
technology
lazy.
allows gamers
They
to
don't wanna
not spend a
optimize
bajillion
things. They
dollars on a
think-
new GPU.
They
But what
think
it
AI
also
is gonna fix everything.
does is encourage developers to not optimize their games, since they know, hey, gamers will just turn DLSS on anyway to make
Yep.
the game run good. I just beat the Silent Hill 2 remake. It came out this October and it was nothing short of mind-blowing. It was also PC-blowing because my computer sounded like a Russian bomber jet trying to run the damn thing. Still loved it to death though, and was rooting for it at the Game Awards. Come on, Luke
And the
Roberts.
winner is
Come on, Luke Roberts.
Melinda Jurgen.
If we check the recommended specs for Silent Hill 2, it suggests using DLSS to play the game at a high setting on the recommended graphics card.
That's
Silent Hill
insane.
2 looks incredible, but it's also Silent Hill 2. The entire game is set in these liminal spaces, so it shouldn't be too difficult to run, even if it looks realistic. Well, if we install the Sunny Hills mod, which turns the town of Silent Hill into a normal small town on a beautiful day, we can see the actual draw distance for the game. Enemies pop in pretty close to James, but the areas that are loaded in are actually surprisingly far away. What's strange about this is that in the
What?
unmodded game, the fog is thick and so close to James, you never even see the buildings that are actually loaded in. Rendering
That's a
most
cool
of the map
concept.
like
I might
this
have to
at
play this
once is
game.
not only pointless, because it takes a significant chunk of performance straight out of your game for no reason at all, but it's also ironic because the fog existed in the first few Silent Hill games for this exact reason. The PlayStation 1 didn't have the power to load distant areas, and to hide the hardware shortcomings, Team Silent slapped a bunch of fog onto the game, which fortunately gave it a more ominous tone, but conveniently improved performance as well. The fog in the Silent Hill 2 remake is still present to provide a bleak tone for the game's visuals, but the
Yeah, that makes
developers
it
aren't
scary.
utilizing it to its full potential. Some games make distant buildings look horrendous to save performance instead of just outright making them disappear, and the Silent Hill 2 remake doesn't even do that. Fine details still appear on the distant objects, but we never would have even seen it in the unmodded version because of the fog. Sure, you could say DLSS and frame generation are excellent solutions for gamers to not spend a fortune on a new card to run these
And
games.
what's the
but as
point
we can
of
see from
buying
the
these cards then? You know, like make the cards cheaper if you're gonna go this route of having everyone use AI to downscale the damn thing. We're spending $3,000, $2,000 on these high-end cards, and some of these games don't even run properly. They need DLSS to work. It's ridiculous at this point. It's either make the cards cheaper because it makes no sense to buy them, or you have to wait for a patch to come out, which honestly speaking, sometimes they don't even patch the game. Developers are like, fuck it, PC, fuck off. So what do you have left? Buy a console? Some people don't want
specs,
to play on
there are
consoles.
also solutions for developers to not make basic fixes for their games because they're thinking, well, why would we make our game run good when DLSS can do it for us? The RTX 4090 can't even play Silent Hill 2 at 4K, which is the industry's current mainstream resolution, at 60 frames per second. That is not only crazy, but it's unacceptable when it's clear that there are
Remember when
obvious
4K
fixes
was
that will make the
so
game
sought
in
after?
question run better without
Now it's the
using
norm. That's
upscaling.
insane.
But despite
I
all
have
the
yet to play a
graphical
game in
issues,
4K.
it still should have won something at the
My
Game
crappy
Awards,
PC
goddammit.
can't run it.
and Silent Hill 2. And the Game Award for audio design goes to
Silent Hill 2, right? Come on.
Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2.
The PlayStation 5 Pro, which is the best console on the market for gaming, and over $1,000 in Canada if you want the disc attachment, uses its own AI upscaling technology known as PSSR, or PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. I remember when the PlayStation 5 was revealed back in 2020, they were preaching that this is a huge step for gaming because developers don't have as many graphical limitations anymore to how they want their game to look. Because of the convenience of power, developers are now making more limitations because of these short-term solutions like upscaling and frame generation to optimize their game for them. PSSR is not good for the future of console gaming. Think about it. Consoles don't allow for advanced graphical customization. On PC, you can select the texture quality, draw distance, shader quality, reflections, and on console, you can choose between performance or quality. In-depth graphics customization will never be a thing on consoles because they're made with the intention to be convenient.
Never say never. I think they're headed to that route. They're trying to figure out a way to streamline it. You know, like they're doing now, like they added performance mode.
So now that we have PSSR, what's stopping these
it's
companies
gonna be limited,
from making
of course,
an unoptimized video game using PSSR to make it run a stable 30 FPS and then calling that the quality setting? This, right now, when some games can't even play 60 FPS at 4K on the fattest GPU on the market, is not good and will only give future developers an incentive to use shortcuts while making the game's visuals. Ray tracing. 2 words that's been crammed into every gaming tech presentation ever since 2018. So here's a quick explanation of what ray tracing actually is. Ray tracing is a graphics technique that simulates how light behaves in the real world to create photorealistic frames. Prior to ray tracing's explosive entrance into the industry in 2018, developers would have to make their own lighting techniques in the game to simulate as accurately as possible how the light and reflections would behave. The thing about ray tracing is that in most modern games, you won't even notice a difference.
We don't care about
most
that
of the awe
stuff,
you'll
man.
get from a game that's ray traced is the placebo effect whispering in your ear that the game looks way better. This is Cyberpunk with ray tracing on max, and this is Cyberpunk with ray tracing off. As you can see, there is a graphical upgrade with ray tracing, but more importantly, there's a huge dent in performance. Ray tracing has actually existed for a very long time though. The initial idea for it was thought up in 1968, and Pixar started using it in their animated films, beginning its reign in A Bug's Life from 1999. Granted, they only used it for like 2 shots, but regardless, they did use ray tracing. That's why 3D animated movies from the early 2000s still look better than modern day stylized games. Now that we have the technology to implement ray tracing in video games though, it's a pro and a con. In some games that don't have detailed casting effects like Minecraft, ray tracing is an enormous upgrade. But in games like Cyberpunk, it looks great in some scenes, but most of the time you probably won't even notice it. It's true that ray tracing is an option. You don't have to enable it, but the support of this new expensive technology means the downfall of an old but gold method of creating reflections. I'm going to use Half-Life 2 for this example. In Half-Life 2, Valve used planar reflections to create convincing looking water. While this can be expensive to performance if used on a large face of water like an ocean for example, it's great for something small like a puddle. Now you guys may be saying, Justin, don't be a dingus, you dingus! Technology needs to evolve over time. Otherwise we'll be stuck in the same place forever. And I 100% agree with you, you're not wrong. I just think that a lot of modern developers are putting all of their chips into ray tracing, even though most modern GPUs still struggle to run games with ray tracing on. In Star Wars Outlaws, for example, there's no option to turn ray tracing off. You can only lower and enhance the quality. All I'm saying is that while I would like to get to the point where every game automatically has ray tracing on, I just feel like most gamers aren't there yet, since a lot of people still use GTX 1080s, RTX 2080s, and whatever the AMD alternatives are, I don't really know. So why limit your audience? There should absolutely be ray tracing options, but I think that developers should still put a lot of effort into optimizing their games for when ray tracing is off so it still looks good and not muggy everywhere. Most people don't have the money to sink into a brand spanking new 4090 that can actually utilize ray tracing well. So the rest of the gamers, including console gamers, are forced to be stuck with these subpar water effects and reflections things because the developers think that they can just glaze over it as fast as possible
they're
since there's an easy,
gatekeeping
quick
all these
solution,
features,
and that's to
chat.
let ray tracing do the work for them.
I love ray tracing. I love shadow quality. A lot of reflective surfaces.
But let's be real.
Not even needed. Nobody cares. That's the thing. All these water effects and shit. I don't know about you. I don't need it in my games. I just want the game to be fun. I just want to be able to play it. I just want to have a good time.
This is
I
too
think a
much
lot of
for what we
gamers
can
feel that
handle
way
right
too.
now. We can barely even run 4K open world games on the
What are we
newest
gonna do,
cards.
stare
So
at the
why
water?
are we building video games
Ooh, this
for
is
ray
great water.
tracing? That is insanity.
is
And
great
again,
lighting.
if ray tracing is an
Man,
option, that's
get that
great.
outta here.
All I'm saying is the game should still look good for the people that don't want to have it enabled. Developers need to optimize their graphics to where the gamers are at and not 100% to where the newest hardware is. Of course, optimize it so the games look as good as possible on that hardware, but don't make it impossible for everybody else because that's just a lose-lose for everybody involved. Now,
Right.
these new games, Stalker 2, Remnant 2, Silent Hill 2, The Witcher 4, all have something in common, and it's that they're all made in the Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine 5, to be specific. When
Shitty
Unreal
engine.
Engine 5 was announced, people thought it would be a huge leap for developers since it would handle a lot of the fine graphical details, taking the work off of the programmers. The flaw with UE5 is that the graphics are incredible, but they're also expensive and unoptimized. Most of these Unreal Engine 5 games suffer the same issues, and that's not only bad performance, but very blatant ghosting. Ghosting is when a frame lingers for a bit, even after it moves on. There's also some pretty clear flickering problems and the hardcore push for temporal anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is a graphics technology that's been around for a while, to be fair, which removes the jagged edges on objects. With it off, the game is completely raw. Each pixel is exactly where it needs to be at the cost of everything looking sharp. What anti-aliasing does is it slightly blurs the image by softening the edges on objects. It makes it appear
Oh,
less
that's
like
what
a
it
video
does?
game and more like
I
a
didn't know
picture.
that.
TAA is used pretty much everywhere now in modern gaming, and if you stand still, it looks pretty good, but if you move, it looks blurry and horrendous. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great example for a game that's made with the idea that TAA will be enabled. The game without it looks weird, and with it on, looks blurry. It's clear that the developers didn't take the time to optimize the game without it, and instead decided to really push for TAA. But the problem is that TAA in Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't completely optimized either, and just ruins the image when the game is moving, which is, you know, most of the game. Stalker 2, an Unreal Engine 5 game, is probably the perfect example of a game that relies on TAA to look good. And it's clear that the game was made with TAA in mind, because the trees are dithered without it on. So basically, if you want to play a modern video game, you either get sharp, unrealistic, and untouched graphics, or turn anti-aliasing on and get a main dish of blurry game with a side of ghosting.
That's insane. These
Anti-aliasing was
developers,
not
man.
always this much of an
They're
issue.
lazy
though.
as
Let's
hell.
look at Skyrim. With anti-aliasing off, the game looks sharp, sure, but it still looks great. While Red Dead Redemption 2 with anti-aliasing off looks sharp and weird, and like the developers never even wanted it to be an option. It's another strange time for gaming. In 2008, we had the notorious piss filter trend, where every game had a brown and yellow color scheme. In 2018, every game had to have a battle royale mode, and in 2024, every game is made in Unreal Engine 5, and nothing runs as well as it should.
Then you have Call of Duty having a menu where all your games are there and you have to download 5 million packs of presets before you start the game.
prevent this from happening, developers need to slow down and take the time to remove the unnecessary clutter that claps performance. They need to think, well, how can we make this reflection look good without ray tracing? And they need to consider the broad audience of gamers instead of what the loaded game journalists who can actually run the game at max settings will say about it.
What the hell?
But most importantly, what do you guys think about all this? How can developers fix this modern issue in gaming? Make sure to let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll check them out as soon as I possibly can. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and make sure
problem.
to have a good one. Also, I wrote a song about this.
You got a music video? Alright, we ain't watching that. Developers, y'all lazy as hell. Go back to making games great again. Y'all doing the most, charging $80 a pop for a game. Way too expensive for some shit that you can't even run. That's all for me. Like, comment, subscribe.